Speaking of them getting in trouble, once they are in trouble for the dragon incident, which we know was real, by the way, Hagrid did get a dragon.
Hagrid did get a dragon. Poor Neville. He got in trouble, and they had to go to the forest.
That was their punishment. They had to go to the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid and try to find an injured unicorn.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm not like an expert at getting in trouble at school, because I pretty much excelled at not doing that. But going into a forest to hunt down...
That's called the Forbidden Forest for a reason.
Yeah. To hunt down something that is killing a unicorn, which by all reasonable people have said...
Basically, across
insane.
the board, even other animals don't like to kill unicorns. Like, across the board, they're fairly protected, and it would be very rare for even a beast to attack it. So they assume it's gotten itself injured somehow rather than something is hunting it.
Okay, that's a good point. I guess that would be why Hagrid had no problems bringing four 11-year-olds. Four. I don't know why I was thinking 5.
Because Fang.
I was thinking of Fang. Fang the dog.
Who's basically a child.
Who's basically just a hairy child. My cat and dog are hairy children. My hairy babies. Yeah. It seems a little extreme. Going to the Forbidden Forest.
There could be anything in that forest. Like all manner of beasts and creatures and things that could attack you and would, while maybe not willing to attack a unicorn, would certainly attack a person.
I'd like to note here that Hagrid never leaves Hermione alone in the woods. Which is probably a good thing, because there's some centaurs running around. And historically speaking, probably wouldn't be a good thing, but we won't talk about that here.
We'll get into that much later, and we might have to do that in a separate installment, as that's not exactly child-friendly.
No. An interesting combination, leaving Neville with Malfoy, because while Harry and Malfoy are constantly butting heads, Neville is Malfoy's victim quite often. He wants to stand up to him, but he doesn't really want to really antagonize him. He really doesn't want to provoke him in any way.
And I don't think Hagrid is around enough because he has so many other duties. Like, he takes time out to go to a Quidditch match. But I don't think Hagrid is around enough to really know that how much Malfoy picks in on Neville, because I think if he'd known that, he may have done that differently in the beginning.
It's true. It's very early in the series, and so he really doesn't know the characters all that well. So it really didn't surprise me at all that Malfoy teased Neville and ended up shooting off some warning sparks, and kind of ended up with Hagrid. Hagrid having to go and save them. Interesting form of punishment, which is where they really came across their first taste of the villain, which we're really going to have to talk about later when we talk about heroes and villains.
They notice a hooded creature running around through the forest.
And this is what's hunting the unicorns. It's probably a good thing Malfoy didn't tell anyone, like his parents, what happened. I just feel like that could be a good way to get a school shut down.
He threatened to, but Hagrid's counterpoint to that was, your parents went to the school. They know how it's run. They know that if you were out of bed, misbehaving late at night, this is your punishment and you deserve it. And I kind of feel like he was right. And Malfoy knew it and was probably more afraid of getting in trouble with his parents than he was at school.
And Malfoy's parents don't seem like the non-strict type.
They seem very strict. And that impression is gonna get stronger as we go on with the books.
For sure.
We don't see a lot of that right now. We're mostly inferring that from the way Malfoy behaves. But that certainly gives you the idea that, like, he is more afraid of being in trouble with his parents than he is to go into that forest with Hagrid and the dog.
But as friends, they took their punishment together. They didn't complain about it. They knew that this is what they had to do. They got in trouble. They lost 150 points for Gryffindor. And
that's a lot of points, by the way.
That's a lot of points.
You don't usually lose that much points. It's usually like 5 or 10 point margins.
So that brings up another point here
that was like 50 points apiece.
Which is true friends versus fair weather friends. So Ron, Harry, Hermione, and Neville. Although Neville he kind of didn't talk to Harry.
He didn't, but he still took the punishment with him, and he still knew he deserved it for being out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't question it, and he went along with it, and he didn't make things hard for them.
And I feel like the reason why Neville didn't talk to Harry after the incident wasn't because he had gotten in trouble. I feel like it was because he thought that Harry had been betrayed them, betrayed Neville, and that he had been lied to. So he felt he had been tricked. So, I mean, I kind of can forgive Neville for that. It should have been corrected by Harry. It wasn't. The true friends, stuck together. And then Harry, who had found all this newfound popularity by being Harry Potter, was suddenly shunned as an outcast. And I think that really showed him who his friends were.
Yeah, all of a sudden, people that were talking to him wouldn't, because he was no longer winning them points playing Quidditch. He was losing them points being out at night.
That Harry Potter boy was no longer popular to be seen talking to. He was no longer cool. He was
mostly ignored.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he talked about all the free time he suddenly had to study and play Quidditch and to try to find an answer they were looking for as to who Nicholas Flamel was, because they hadn't figured that out yet.
Because he had been shunned, and I think that really is an important part in the book. He learns very early in this series who his true friends are, who's going to stand by his side. Even though Neville wasn't talking to him, still stood up to him in the end.
He did, and he still had interactions with him. He wasn't mean the way the other students were, who were even saying bad things about him. Neville, who had at that point in his mind every right to say bad things about Harry, didn't. He didn't join in saying the bad stuff. He just simply didn't interact with him unless he had to.
It's true. He was more hurt than anything, and I think that if you had a friend who you really depended on and really looked up to, and they suddenly you think that you've been betrayed, I think that you might not talk to them either for a little bit. Or
exactly.
Just, you wouldn't be mean about it, just sort of not put yourself out there and make yourself available to speak with them as much. So I feel like Neville's justified in that. But I think for sure that that's an important part of friendship that I don't know a lot of people talk about. That Harry was actually shunned. He was extremely popular. And after winning the House Cup back again, he's again, popular again. But there was a couple of weeks there when nobody talked to him.
Yeah, well, more than a couple weeks. It was a few months.
I guess so, yeah. And I think it's good to find a good friend who's going to stand by you no matter what, through all the ups and downs in life. Because it's never a straight road. It's full of bumps and curves. And I think Harry finds that very early.
We also see how he's made of better stuff, because when he has to, he gets along with Malfoy, because when they're in those woods together,
that's true.
He takes it seriously. He knows Malfoy's not going to play the same tricks on him that he would on Neville, because he knows he's not a scaredy and it wouldn't result in anything. And as a result, that goes more smoothly once they're paired together, even though you would think with as much as they butt heads and they hate each other, it wouldn't.
Yeah, but they're also kind of a little afraid.
Yeah.
They're in the Forbidden Forest.
Well, self-preservation kicks in.
That's true. You become become allies with who you need to be in a situation like that.
Yeah, and that's different, not really friendship, but it does play towards that a bit. And it does show Harry's character.
For sure.
And he makes more than one ally in the woods.
He does make more than one ally in the woods. In this book, we're introduced to some characters who become important later in the series. The Centaurs. We can't really get into it much now, but there's been some allies made that are are going to be strong allies in the future.
Yeah, centaurs are not known for wanting to be part of the wizarding community, despite being sentient beings. They were looked down on in the past by wizards for so long, and this comes from the Fantastic Beasts textbook, that they have decided they don't want to be classed as beings because they don't want to be part of the same ruling system that wizards are. They would rather have their own government and do things their own way, which they've acknowledged. So they've acknowledged them as sentient beasts rather than beings because they preferred that classification. In that they're not super helpful to the wizarding world, but they see that dark times are coming. They know a unicorn is being hurt. So they try in their own way to give vague hints, but are not really helpful. One centaur in particular breaks that code and actually comes to Harry's aid because he says, you know, this is a time of war, this is when we should be allies.
Yes. And I can never pronounce his name correctly. Friends,
I think,
Friends?
maybe.
I can never pronounce that right.
It's a bit of a tricky name.
Yeah. Starts with an F. It's got a Z in there, right?
Yep.
Okay. Friends. Okay.
We don't know, but...
But he actually breaks the codes of the centaurs and allows Harry onto his back, which is the rest of the centaurs think is demeaning to have a human ride your back. And
as if you were a horse, because let's face it, they're not common horses.
They're smarter than horses. I mean, these are intelligent beings. They think about the cosmos and they watch the stars and they look for signs of what's going to happen in the future. They know what's coming.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of them realizing that they're going to have to become allies and become friends with the wizarding world in order to face what's coming.
Definitely.
And I think that's it for us for today.
Yeah.
Covered everything?
I think that's everything for friendship.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
So join us next week when we are going to do the next theme, which will be heroes and villains.
All right.
And until then,
we solemnly swear we're up to no good.